Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the fourth video in this short series. I'm getting ready to teach the software development with Java class this coming fall. It's July when I'm making the video right now. Uh, and the final project for the class is going to be a web app with JSP pages and a REST API that returns some data relevant to the whatever the students choose for their project. And um, we'll be using the Spring Boot application because that makes it Spring Boot starter files. That makes it so much easier. And so for the example here, which a big part of this video is just so that I can give um, one link to the students to look for all of the stuff that's needed for their final projects, all of the requirements, and see the base code there instead of digging around through different tutorials or trying to remember things scattered throughout the semester. It will all be in one place. And I thought, well, since I was going to make a video to practice it anyway, might as well just share those videos publicly on YouTube in case other people are interested. Spring Bootloader makes it really easy. I often think it's almost like working in Python again because Spring Bootloader handles all the dependencies and that stuff that usually takes forever in Java, like where we tell the computer how to run our code, and then we get started writing the code. The Spring Boot starter files handle all that how-to part, and we can jump right into the just writing the code relevant to our project. So far it's a tip calculator, a REST API that returns just a couple of names of restaurants, a small example there. The tip calculator, because those make good examples. There's not a logic to get lost in, so we can quickly do the look at the syntax. And when previewing the last video, I noticed I made a slight error in the HTML form on that. I didn't put min and max, which means the minimum and maximum are set to 0 and 100%. And I only made it 9 days as a server, and those were awful days. I'm surprised I made it 9 days. So I definitely don't want to make a tip calculator that goes as low as 0. Say 8% for an absolute minimum. That's like if the server gets mad and hits me with a plate or something. That's probably still a 10% tip because I know how awful of a job serving can be at times. I was a terrible server. I had no business doing that. Uh, but yeah, need a minimum and maybe 33% for a maximum. Forgot to put that in earlier, but we set up our JSP pages, got everything working in the previous videos. Let's run it to see where it's at the current location. It's built as a Maven project, so as Spring Boot set it up with an embedded Tomcat server, we don't even have to worry about configuring the server. Even that's handled for us, so we just worry about the Java code, the JSP, and the Java classes, and other things. So that's what the next thing is. We open up the browser, navigate to localhost port 8080. It's still all in the default settings. Some number for the price of the meal, really good service, and we get a sentence back with our telling us what the tip should be, a basic tip calculator, just a trivial example, and then an API of the 3 restaurants I go through every week. Last year or so, it's been Wednesdays. I just rotate through those. Seemed like a good uh, a trivial example that fit here. But this is kind of a boring look. It's just the default look. So we might want to do some styling. We'll definitely want to do some styling. So as far as the videos here, I just wanted to show you where the pages go. And that will go in our static folder. The style sheet is static, so are images and the client side scripting or JavaScript file. So if we come up to expand, if it's closed, expand other sources, under source main resources, you should see a static folder. So if we create a new CSS file here, I've opened it recently, but in NetBeans, if you haven't opened one recently, the CSS is under other. So scroll down to file types and select cascading style sheet from the other, and I'll call it eats or eat. What was the project called? Was it eat or eats? I'll call it eats.css. That'll work. Oh yes, it was there was an S in there. And those are all comments. We don't need any of those. I always start with this, min height 100%. A small thing, but if you have a gradient covering your whole web page and you only have like one paragraph on the page, the computer will decide that you don't need that gradient to cover the whole page. It only needs to be behind the paragraph, and that always annoys me. So I always do that one first. Maybe a font size, so we have some styling. Make it a little smaller than the default. I believe my browser is set for 12-point default. Maybe just something simple. We have an H1 tag, an H3 tag. Let's just set the color on them. Rosy brown, that's a good color. And maybe the anchor tags, we'll set those to be green. Just to have a little bit of style. The point of this was just to show you where the style sheet goes. And if you're only exposure to, if you're new to frameworks and maybe you've seen seen Django, that's a lot of people's introduction to frameworks. This is going to seem really easy because we don't have to do anything else. I want to refer to that example because a lot of people have seen Python as well as Java in the modern world if you're learning software development. And in the Django framework, the stuff in the static folder is one of the very, very, very few places that we actually get into the background and deal with the stuff in the background on how the program runs in Python. For a lot of people, that's the only one they see, so there's extra steps there. But here, there's no extra steps. We just put it in the static folder, and we were already messing with the background and doing a build every time, so we don't have to worry about wheels and migrations and things like that. So that'll get the style sheet in there and stop the previous run so that the port's not occupied and run it again. I'll go ahead and open the browser. It's probably started by now. Back over here. Oh, whoops. Guess it helps if we actually put that on the JSP page, doesn't it? So that's where the style sheet goes, but as always, we kind of need to put that in our page. So style sheet is just a link tag with relevance of a style sheet. MIME type of text, it's text format and holding CSS code, and the hyperlink reference to it. This is, it's in a static folder and called eats/css. So I'm just going to put /eats.css, which actually, this is away from my plan. I want to come over here and create a new folder. This is what I planned on doing, create a new folder called CSS. And then I'm going to put it in there. So we have the static folder, then the CSS folder. So it's going to look at the static folder, then we go CSS/eats. I planned on showing that and kind of got ahead of myself. So we'll hold Shift and Home to highlight the line and copy that over to the other two so that there's consistency across our pages. In the static folder, where CSS should be, along with images and JavaScript and all the other non-dynamic things. Excuse me. Put a CSS folder, and then there's eats.css in there. Hopefully that all looks familiar. That's just basic JSP, so that's part of the core Java programming language, not even into the frameworks or anything. So when we run it, now we should see the style sheet. There we go. So we got a little bit of coloring on there. Can run over, check our tip calculator. Maybe $50, really lousy service. Calculate that, get our message, check our API, all that stuff still works. But there's one other thing that goes really, really nicely in projects, and that's the telemetry. How's this going? How long's our project been running for? How many people have visited the site? And all the stuff like that. And that is really easy with Spring Boot starter projects because we just ask for a dependency, which was shown in an earlier video. We could just type it right in the POM file. If you know what it is, type it right in here, or it's one that shows up in a lot of them, so you can just copy it from the previous Spring Boot project, is what usually happens. But I'm going to use the IDE, go to the dependencies, and add a dependency, and I want to search for Spring Boot Starter Actuator. Um, and we want this second one, Spring Framework, with the actuator. I'm not sure who made the other one. A lot of people like to go to go do a Google search and actually check the Maven repository directly instead of using the ID for it. But however you want to search for it, or just type it in directly. And I'm going to take out the type so that it always, or I'm going to take out the version tag so that it just always pulls the latest one. But the IDE wants the version there when it inserts it. So that added it here. And I'm just going to take out the version so it just always pulls the latest one and line up the indentation because that, yeah, if markup languages aren't lined up, it bothers me more than it probably should. So now we have that, and we can actually, we'll see some stuff immediately from that. There's a default version, there's some default stuff there. Let's look at the default, and then we'll customize what comes back from it. So back to the browser, open up our page, and if we add /actuator into the URL, we'll see some links here. So here's the link to the page we're actually on, which I'm going to copy that. Or well, maybe, yeah, we don't need to put that in there. By default, there's a health thing. Tells us it's up. We can get more stuff there, customizable. Yeah, we don't have any customization in health. So I guess health is the only one there by default. But there's lots of things we could put there. And those go into a file we've seen before, the application.properties. And to get that actuator, there's a management package, and in that, there's some things about endpoints, in particular, the web ones, and what do we want to expose and include. So, um, which web points are we going to include? So it's that line management.endpoints.web.exposure.include. MEWEI. It's probably easiest to come up with some sort of sentence to help you remember those words. If we can do an asterisk, that's just everything to see what's there. And now if we go to localhost port 8080, and we can just jump right to the actuator. So now we got a few more things. We can see all the beans. So all that stuff in the background that Spring Boot typed for us, so we didn't have to, and we could just jump right to the Java code. Somewhere in here we have one bean. We only created one thing that had the default constructor, the getters, and the toString method, which forces it to be serializable. So same thing as implementing the serializable interface. Um, some caches. We didn't set up any caches, but they're there to get health. We saw that. Info about, we didn't add any info about it. You can see lots of things there. Different logs. We didn't set up any logs, but there's the level. So the lowest level is off, and we choose which level. We put it in the application.properties, and then all the levels above that would also happen. So if we say trace, then we get everything. If we say info, we get info, warnings, and errors. So different levels of information that we can get, and it would show up right in here if any had been logged. Metric was the one I was going to look at. So metrics, and we have a whole bunch of metrics here. You notice there's also a metrics / something. So if we go here, we can see all the names. So like metrics dot memory allocated. If we copy that and up here in the address bar, do / paste that in, We can see how much RAM we've been allocated on our server, um, count of the bytes. There's this many bytes. What is that? There's three, so 62.9 megabytes is what Tomcat decided to give us. Um, how much of the memory is actually committed? I didn't get the whole thing copied, so /J and then paste. But we're only using this many bytes, um, mostly in the heap. Uh, there's ways we can get more details to say how much of it's in the heap, how much of it's non-heap. Um, the CPU usage, all of that stuff. There should be some requests somewhere. Yeah, so how many requests have been made? How many requests are currently active? Lots of things that we can get from this. The time for each one, different thing. Lots of different metrics. We don't necessarily need every one, so instead of an asterisk, or I'm going to stop the previous run of the server. Instead of the asterisk, I just want to see health and um, metrics. Had to think for a second about whether there was an S there or not. So either an asterisk for everything or comma separated values, and then we have more customization abilities over that stuff. So that finishes out this little thing. So we see how to make a JSP page, how to make a REST API, um, our functioning application, 1234 with really great service, tells us what to tip. Jump back to there, and we also have /actuator to get all of our metrics. So if we wanted server requests, how many buffers have we had to use? Probably not many here. /paste, and we can get all of the stuff. Oh, I guess we have had to store 73 kilobytes temporarily while running things. Mapped to non-volatile memory, so they were just shoved in RAM. But all of that telemetry and the information about how our application is running. So 4 short videos, a couple of them went a little over 20 minutes, but that's the basic idea of what's going to be involved with the final project for the software development with Java class in fall of 2023. And we will see all that stuff in pieces along the way through the semester. So by the time we get to the project, all of that stuff will be reviewed, and all of these videos are all of the stuff that is needed for that is now in one place. So I will share the links with the students specifically for their project, but I'm going to make it public on YouTube because hopefully it'll be useful for other people as well. Hopefully you saw that and saw how easy it is to make a Java project with the Spring bootloader. All the stuff that normally makes Java harder, um, that mindless background stuff, Spring bootloader takes care of that for us. And I always feel it's a lot like and it's more like working in Python. We don't have to worry about the background stuff. It's there to customize if we want to, but for the most part, we just dive right into the Java code specific to our application. The Java code and the JSP pages, which JSP is part of the core language. So I hope you found that helpful. Thank you for watching.